Cool. Hey, let's build a city. So I just read Plato's Republic, and the Socratic dialogue of building a city is really fascinating. Now, I didn't realize this. Plato asks a lot of leading questions, and I think I do this too, but it makes me feel better about myself. He's like, "You think this way, right?"
Now help me out here because so it's been a little while. Plato's writing the Republic. Is it Socrates who's the speaker in the Republic, or is Plato? Yeah, okay.
Yep. It's Socrates. So that helps him in many regards. First of all, it's a challenge because you never know, is this Plato's actual opinion on how things should progress, or is he just presenting an idea meant for us to debate? Because there are some very dystopian things in the Republic, as in the ideal form of government is aristocracy. So you have a group of guardians, elite guardians, the nobility who rule. And sometimes they're going to have to lie to the people to make that work. So his big example is this. He's like, marriage has to be held in the highest regard. So, hey, that sounds great, doesn't it, David?
Yeah, sounds biblical, in fact.
Okay. Hey, see, I'm doing Socratic dialogue. And he said, so in order to keep marriage in the highest regard, we have to limit who gets married. So, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a lottery system for marriage, and we're going to make it seem random. And we're going to pair only those who we think are going to be good at giving birth to children. And it's going to seem random so that when people aren't allowed to get married, they're just going to say, "Oh man, it wasn't in the cards. That was all chance."
Okay. This feels like what's that? The Giver. This kind of dystopia. This is what you're talking about, right? Where okay, so does Plato express any reservations about lying, or is it obvious to him that not everybody should know all the truth?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a real tension there because he's going to say like we should pursue the truth, like that's the good. But he said in order to get to the truth, sometimes you got to lie.
Okay, okay. This reminds me. I can't remember the details of it, but I heard a conversation between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson. You know, when these guys were kind of like making their waves and their what is it, the horsemen of the apocalypse. They were kind of fancied as the extreme liberal thinkers who were overturning liberalism. So the conversation was about truth, and it's funny because Sam Harris's take was Sam Harris's ethics insists on never lying, never under any circumstances, which is really kind of interesting. Um, and Jordan Peterson said that like there are certain kinds of truths that because of what they will result in, they might be true. Like you might say that they're true in a certain sense, but because they are destructive. What's the term for something that they're because they produce an existential risk, they're actually false, right? So you uncover truths that allow you to produce an atom bomb, but we might actually be better off calling those things false because they pose an existential risk. It was really interesting to hear them have this conversation because, of course, like Sam Harris is like, you can't use that word, you can't use the word truth in that way because like it's objective, either it is or it isn't, right? And Jordan Peterson was like, well, evolutionarily speaking, or whatever it might be, it's like things that are destructive or pose existential risks are false in a sense. Anyways, so I wonder if Plato would even be willing to do the same thing. He's like, there's a higher sense of truth where, in order for us to obtain the truth, the ultimate truth, you have to go through some lies to get there.
Right. Yeah, and he would call that the his dialectic of this is philosophy. And no, that's a great foundational question. And this is what Pilate asks, right? Like what is truth? And that's such a great question. And of course the biblical answer of course is right, Christ himself, right? The way, the truth, and the life. But okay, so help me think through this. When is it okay to lie?
So I think an easy starting place is it is okay to lie. So Anne Frank is hiding in your basement, right? You can lie. It is. Are you hiding a Jew in your basement? No, I am not. That's okay to lie.
Right. So our framework then is the Ten Commandments for our sense of morality, and lying is the eighth commandment, right? Thou shalt not bear false witness. Now, I think this is really helpful. So Luther will say the commandments are ordered in rank of importance. So what you're doing is you're breaking the eighth commandment. So you're lying, but you're doing it in order to keep the fifth commandment, thou shalt not murder. So you're lying in order to preserve a life righteously.
Okay, so I think you're right about the ranking of the commandments to at least to some degree, right? I think that makes sense. So, for instance, I mean, well, okay, so we'd have to work it through because I'm thinking about like the prohibition, the Sabbath prohibition, but then like loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, right? So to have no other gods means includes within it like not doing harm to your neighbor, drawing your son out of a well when he's fallen into it on the Sabbath. But do you think that the precision with which God gives us the eighth commandment makes it so that it's not actually a blanket statement about lying, although that's part of it, right? Obviously, lie that is told in order to harm your neighbor is terrible. Worse, when that lie is given under oath. So false testimony is technical language for what you might do in a courtroom. What is done against Naboth, perpetrated by Jezebel. Here are some worthless fellows. They say this man blasphemed God, so now we are justified in stoning him to death. So that's precisely speaking what giving false testimony would be. Certainly, telling a lie in order to perpetrate evil is very bad, especially when it's under oath. You might even say that the eighth commandment, as Luther will say in the large commandment, protects people from having the truth told about them in such a way that hurts their reputation, right? So it's false witness if you're bearing witness when it's not called for. But does it, like, I don't necessarily think that it means a prohibition against lying, generally speaking.
Okay, so you're trying to narrow it down more to a particular, like, this is more in a sense a legal commandment.
So I think that's the context for it, but I think so. Here's how I would frame it. What do the commandments protect? The eighth commandment protects not the truth, but it protects reputations. That's what it's designed to protect.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm on board with that. So would you say the first commandment then protects the truth?
This is tricky.
Because you would say that truth is more important than reputation, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. So in one sense, yes. Okay, so we tease it out because like Luther will say that recognize the distinction between public sins and private sins, right? So I can know something true about you privately, but I would be sinning against you if I spoke it publicly, right? So the truth is important, but more important is that nobody know the truth about you. That's actually more important.
Right. Yeah. So the secret, the sins in private, things like that. I hear what you're saying. I'm talking like truth in general. So I'm trying to think about like where the second commandment, because I don't want to limit the eighth commandment to only being this legal thing. So this is how we talk about the second commandment, right? Not misusing the name of the Lord your God. So this is great to connect it to baptism because where's God's name? Well, hey, buddy, it's on you, right? So it's like, in a sense, everything you do, everything you say is done in the name of the Lord your God, which is kind of a terrifying thing to think about.
Right. So, and that's good because that also connects then to the first commandment. So, the worse than saying false things about your neighbor would be saying false things about God. That's worse. And by you could say like arguably by telling the Nazis that Anne Frank is hiding in your basement, you're saying something untrue about God. Ultimately speaking, you're saying that this authority that God has appointed has authority to take life even in unjustified cases, right? Like the God has appointed this authority and they can do whatever they want, right? That would be a lie about God, which is why disobedience would be justified, and lying in the in the effort to disobey would be justified.
Yeah. Well, this is good. This is why ethics gets so difficult. I guess I don't want to overthink it, because sometimes we get ourselves into just a real quagmire. It's at the end of the day, what's right and what's wrong, and I think most of the time it's fairly easy.
Right, which is, I mean, so Jesus reveals this when he talks to the Pharisees, and he's, is it lawful to do? We talked about this last time, right? To do good on the Sabbath or not? To do harm or to kill, or to do good or to kill on the Sabbath? And so the litmus test, isn't it? I mean, this is the ethical litmus test. Is how are you? How are you? What's your method for deciding this? Is your method for deciding what you should or should not do your status? Like, how do you maintain your status? Then clearly it doesn't even matter if you do the right thing, outwardly speaking, you're still wrong, right? So if they decide that they're going to say, yes, it's better to do good on the Sabbath because that means we will look better, right? Civically speaking, it's the right thing to do, but they're still wrong, and that's revealed in the fact that they find it to be an honest to goodness dilemma because their criterion is misguided.
Yeah, no, this is good. This brings us back to Plato, because they're arguing about what's better, the just or the unjust life. And Plato will say, a lot of people want to live the just life only so that they look good. And so it actually means they're living the unjust life.
Ah, interesting. So then back a step further to the notion that the aristocracy is the ideal form of government, and that the aristocracy are justified in lying to what would be the hoi polloi, right? For Plato, they're justified in lying to them. Where does wisdom fit in it? Like, is the criteria for being a member of the aristocracy, does that include wisdom, charity, goodwill? Are those characteristics required? Virtue?
Yep. So the virtues are definitely required, and what he's getting at is like wisdom. So philosophy, right? The love of wisdom. That's the highest ideal. That's the highest pursuit anybody can chase. Now, this is helpful to think about because we recognize this. Not everybody can think this way. Like who actually likes philosophy? And we just know this based on experience. Pretty weird people, right? And I'm talking about you. So like he's pragmatic in a sense. He's like, not everybody can do this, so we need to find the people who can. Usually they're going to have good blood, although not all the time, and then they're going to have virtue. Now we need to define virtue, but it's going to be the standard stuff. So it's what is good, what is true, and we're going to identify these people and give them a good education. So I think you'd be fascinated in this discussion. He says, we're going to have to train them in music and all sorts of stuff. Although interestingly, Plato hates poetry. He hates Homer.
Because Homer presents the gods as being real when we all know that they're just a myth.
I don't know if he said it like that, but he's saying it's this overly emotional tale, and it's manipulative, and it's instilling something in you that's not ultimately virtue, because it's what's virtuous is rational, and Homer is all about the emotions.
Why does he hate Santa Claus so much? Love that big jolly guy.
Listen, buddy. Saint Nicholas of Smyrna stood up for the divinity of Christ at the Council of Nicaea. So would it kill you to mention him in your sermons every now and then?
That's good. It's funny because that's actually one of the points for Sam Harris, is that like there's nothing worse that you can do for your children than to lie to them about Santa Claus. Like this is the fundamental issue.
For being such an outspoken atheist, that guy is sure pious.
Yeah, that's well. Okay, so that's interesting, isn't it? Right? Like so, the problem with the world is not a lack of morality, is not a lack of piety. It never is, right? It's just a devotion to the wrong things.
Right. It's a misguided piety, and that's hard to steer. But man,
so what's missing then for Plato? So first of all, does he think of the aristocracy as the ideal form of government, as in this is this is what exists in the world of ideas, is an aristocracy, or does he think of it as the best we can do?
Well, so I think both things. So certainly it would be the form, right? That's the highest ideal, and he says this has never been obtained yet.
Okay.
So then every following form of government is going to be a twist of the aristocracy. So I'm trying to get this right. So it's first aristocracy, and then he says, now we've never attained that. So what happens then is it turns into a timocracy, meaning an honor-based government. And so this is where Homer falls. So I don't know if Plato hates Homer. He says, I grew up loving Plato. I grew up with all of his stuff. And what he says about Homer, yeah, loving Homer, right? Yeah, so he says about Homer, it's all about honor. So you see this with Odysseus, and he says what happens with a timocracy is they're all about war, and so they're fighting war all the time, and they glorify it. Now this quickly delves into the next form of government, which would be oligarchy. So this is a rule of the oligarchs, and they love money more than anything. So this is the merchant class. And as I was reading this, I was like, man, this sounds an awful lot like our country today.
Okay, so help me with the etymology here. Aristocracy. What is the root there?
Aris would be the best.
Okay, the highest. Okay, and then oligocracy would be the few, and then you also get plutocracy, which would be the rich, right? Which it probably goes hand in hand with oligarchy, right?
Yep.
Okay. So does he solve the problem of how the best are selected? Who gets to decide who the most virtuous are?
The philosophers.
Okay. So ultimately the philosophers are ruling, but they're ruling by proxy because they have chosen the rulers.
Well, ideally what would happen is you would have a philosopher king. And then through the education system, you would identify who the next guardians are going to be. You would give them this education, and then they would then progress to be the new aristocrats. Now, I'm trying to think through history. It's like you have this a little bit, kind of, with Alexander the Great. And of course, Aristotle is his tutor. And Plato, I don't know if he ever commented on it. I don't have my dates because Alexander the Great, 332 BC, right? I don't know when Plato dies, but certainly before he conquers the entire world. But Plato would not have liked Alexander because he would say he's all in it for the honor, right? For the war. So he's not actually the true philosopher king. Now, here's your question then: Who's the one emperor who is the philosopher king?
One emperor who's the philosopher king. I don't know. Charlemagne.
Well, I like that answer. I like Charlie too. No, Marcus Aurelius.
Okay. Good.
So that would be interesting to do a case study. It's like how did it actually work out, right? And it had to be a Stoic, which, I mean, I see this kind of ring in Plato here. Emotions are bad. So, and this is really a bummer. So now I'm starting to see a divergence between Christ the Logos and then Plato's ideal of the Logos, because the Logos becomes flesh, which is inherently an emotional thing. Not only an emotional thing, but certainly the emotions are involved.
Right. And that's the problem with thinking dualistically about humanity, so that you have these faculties as well as this embodiment that are distinct, like they're separable from one from another, right? So it was Pope John Paul who talked about that it won't do to say that you have a body and a soul, but to say rather that you are a body and soul, right?
Well, yeah, and Thomas Aquinas will say that we're souls who have bodies.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that comes from Aristotle as well. And I like that, although it needs to be teased out. What exactly does that mean? But so this is a great time to like introduce Christology into the conversation, because what Plato does, everything is related to each other. So you got these 5 different types of cities. By the way, after oligarchy is democracy, so second from the bottom.
Which I could have told you that.
Yeah. Well, so because he sees Socrates killed by the mob, so he's killed by the demos, by the people. So this makes sense. And then after democracy, it quickly devolves into tyranny. So what Plato then does is he says, with each of these 5 forms of civilization, you have 5 different kinds of people, which directly relate to these kinds of governments.
I'm thinking back to the notion of the aristocracy lying and the way that these things propagate or perpetuate. So it's interesting that with a philosopher king who's the possessor of the truth, but also doles out the truth in a way that is like best for the people, some admixture of the truth and a lie that's best for the people. If you are going to have any succession, you also need to be handing over this kind of like, like you need to be handing over the classified files from one guy to the next in order to maintain the thing. And the reason why timocracy is more attractive is because it's all done in the open. Like everybody can see. There's no curtain, and there's nobody behind the curtain. It's like on the one hand, sometimes it's the guy who's the strongest who wins the fight. But on the other hand, you can see how he fought. And so you know who you're dealing with, right? So it may be that the stronger guy beat your guy or beat the better guy, but you saw how the better guy died. And so you can still, like, you can recognize virtue. So like, who is it that gets, Achilles drags Hector around, behind a horse. I think that's how it goes in the Iliad. There's this dishonorable behavior and reveals the heart of the guy, because we saw how he waged war. Nobody's listening to this anyways, but somebody's gonna tell me that I got that story wrong.
Hey, I checked the statistics on Apple Podcasts, and hey, we're in the teens on that platform.
That's great. One of you 12 people, let me know what I got wrong about that story.
I can't tell you because I haven't. I think we read excerpts from Homer in high school, but that's gonna be my next read. So
Nice.
I just started the introduction to the Odyssey.
You were gonna say something about Christology, then, in view of these 5 different kinds of cities, I think, right?
Yeah. So what is a human being? Like how does the divine relate to our human nature? And this is a direct correlation with how the soul deals with the body, right? So this is where Chemnitz on the two natures is so helpful for realizing like who we are as people. So I'll say there's 3 acceptable analogies or metaphors for how the two natures relate to each other. So he'll say one is like, this is the most famous example, I think, is the iron rod stuck in the fire. It's still an iron rod, but you see there's something different about it, right? It's glowing. And so in this way, it's like, what part is the iron rod? And it's like, the whole thing. What's different about it? Like, what's the divine, right? So you have a hard time. Like, you can tell there's a difference between the rods. So that's a helpful one. And that's in the Confessions, right? Is that in the formula?
Yeah, that's in the formula of Concord, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second, he'll say it's like the sun and the rays. So there's a distinction there, but the rays are still a part of the sun. And then the most confusing one, but perhaps the most helpful one, is he says the two natures relate to each other in the same way that the human body and the human soul relate to each other.
Yeah. That's it. So the Aristotelian way of thinking about things, which is taken up by Aquinas, says that the soul is the form and the body is the matter. So matter doesn't exist in a formless state, and the thing that forms the matter of a human body is the soul. And so if you were to remove the soul, you no longer have a human body. It's something else. It's now a corpse. It's not a human body anymore.
Right. Yeah. This is so speaking of like the forms and the human body and the human soul, like what do we say about people when they act in such a disgusting way?
Yeah. They're being subhuman or inhumane. Yeah.
Right, exactly, right? So we've idealized something. Where did that come from? But we don't say that about dogs, right? Like, look at them not being undog-like. I don't know, what would that be? In canine-like? In canine? Help me out here.
Yeah, I got nothing. What's interesting, of course, is that while we might say that about somebody, they're behaving in an inhuman way. They're behaving, it's like he's acting like a dog or he's acting like a pig. the reason why that's a potent statement is because he is not in fact a pig or a dog. He is a human, but is not behaving in a way that comports with his nature. And he can't undo that. Like he can't become a pig or a dog. And so it's like this kind of worse corruption. If he were to become a pig or a dog, then it would be fine. You know?
Right. Yeah. You can't just set aside your human nature.
Right. In the very same way then that you can't Jesus cannot lay aside his human nature. Otherwise having taken on human flesh, having become incarnate, he ceases to be Christ, right? If he were to lay aside his human nature.
Right. At any point, right? So even now.
Yeah, which is why the Calvinists are wrong. Let it be on the record that I said the Calvinists are wrong.
Hey, you hear that, Jeff Evans? We're coming for you. Okay, so talk to me about that. Are you talking about how the natures relate to each other then? The genus Majastaticum?
Yeah, and so like the iron is in the fire and it's red hot, and that is how it is now. What we are dealing with is a red hot iron, and it's not going to cool. It is, right?
Okay, great. Okay, that's a helpful foundation. We're talking about different types of human beings. So if we're going to build a city, and by the way, we're talking about Genesis 5, and this is the descendants of Cain. So I think what you have here are two cities. Sorry, the descendants of Seth in Genesis 5. We just had the descendants of Cain in Genesis 4. So I think you have two different cities, two different civilizations, right? You have a evil city and you have a good city. And of course, Augustine, who was a Neoplatonist in a way, is going to write a book called The City of God, talking about these two cities. I think is that he does bring this up in the book. It's been 6 months since I've read it. Hey, great book, by the way, David. You should sit down and read it sometime. I don't know why you're so against Augustine.
It's on my table over here, but it's under 4 other books. So what can you do?
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna build a city. So what's the foundation
for a city? Let's see. I don't know. An ideology, a principle, an ethic.
That's cute. Okay, what ethic?
Okay, so in the case, if you're dealing with Seth, it's the promises of God. This would be hear God's word and believe it. Okay, in the cities of Cain, the ethic is take what you want. Might makes right.
So okay, so you're saying that the foundation of all cities then would be myths, as in the proper understanding of that word, the mythos, the story?
Sure, yeah, you could say that.
Okay, well, I want to make it more concrete. Would you say that the foundation of any city would be blood?
Okay, we could say that.
So, because I want to go that direction, because you see that with Cain, right? He kills Abel and then he founds a city, the first city we have reported. So that's built on Abel's blood, and it was an unjust killing. On the other hand, Seth's line is going to be built on Christ's blood, right? Looking forward to the future, but he's the foundation, right? He's oh, I love this. He is the lamb slain before the foundation of the world. And so Christ's blood is the foundation, but it's also, so it's on the bottom, but it's also on the top. It's the highest ordeal. And then we can throw your cute little ethic in there.
Well, okay. You're not Socrates. Let me just put it that way. How's that sound?
It's pronounced Socrates.
This is making me think of what Paul says about Abraham. He was looking for, it was in chapter 11, Hebrews 11, right? For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for He has prepared for them a city. So they're all living prospectively, waiting for the revelation of the sons of God, which is very, very much Mosaic, right? The revelation of the sons of God, the fulfillment of Seth's line. And that city is founded proleptically on the blood of Jesus. Is that the right use of the word proleptically? Which is typified by the blood of Abel, right? The blood of righteous Abel. But the blood of Abel can't accomplish it. It needs to be a better cry needs to be heard.
Yeah, it sounds like Hebrews. That's really good.
Yeah.
I don't I don't know. Prolepsis, proleptically, those are just fancy words that I just use. I don't know what they really mean.
Yeah. It happened beforehand. I should just stick to English words.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm gonna write that
But
one
isn't that the
down.
case that like for yeah, you're supposed to use Germanic words rather than Latin words because the Germanic words are earthier, they're more tangible, whereas Latin words are too abstract. That's what I've been told. So
What church body do you belong to?
yeah, there might be a bias there.
So if we look at Genesis 5, Cain's line, the unrighteous line, and this is really helpful comparing them side by side because this makes Genesis 6 make a whole lot more sense when we're told that the sons of God intermarried with the daughters of men. Because if you understand that the sons of God are the sons of Seth and the daughters of men are the daughters of Cain, then you don't have to deal with these whatever demonic half-breed Nephilim, which that one always baffled me because Nephal just means fallen ones.
Yeah. I mean, it's a well, you like to use the word cute stories, right? Like it's a cute story. It's somehow more exciting than just dealing with the fact that men are wicked and then wicked men marry no, good godly men start marrying evil women and that's the end of them, right?
Right. Oh man, that's the book of Proverbs, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah, that's right. And we'd rather have it be demons involved, demons and angels.
Yeah, and it's not that they're not involved, but just not in the way that we'd like them to be.
Right. That's good. Okay, so you've got these two lines here, Cain and Seth, and what can you tell me about the details of the civilizations that they build? They're the people that come after them.
Right. So it's if you look at their names, and some of this is a guess because sometimes we don't know our Hebrew too well, but so we're going to start with Cain. So this is Genesis 4. So Enoch, and notice this, Seth also has a descendant called Enoch. So you got two different kinds of Enochs. Seth's Enoch is the good Enoch who we sing about in is it Chief of Sinners, right? Chief of Sinners, though I be. There's a line about Enoch in the way that Enoch trod.
Okay. Yep.
Sounds right. So that's the Enoch who doesn't die, who's taken up into heaven. That is not this Enoch. So Enoch means dedicated. So this is great. You have two different types of dedication. Cain's line, you start with Enoch because they're dedicated to evil, to bloodlust. As Lamech would say, he's gonna give it back to him 77 times, and it's like eating that bag of Doritos. Once you start, you can't stop. By the way, I use that analogy with the college kids, and one of the kids goes, "What's wrong with eating the whole bag of Cheetos? I do that all the time." It's like, well, okay.
Back up one step, just real quick. I think you could even do something here with Cain. Seth means foundation, right?
So yeah, so Cain means smith, right?
Okay. I thought it was going to be something else. I wanted to look at my lexicon. I'll check here while you're.
There's always a couple different meanings, but I thought Cain would be like smith, like a metal worker.
Okay. Okay.
Does that check out?
I got some stuff here for like jealousy, envy. Interesting. Kana is to acquire or buy. I thought that there was a use of the something with those consonants, the k and the n, that made a like established was the root, but I've got that wrong. Kana to create, right? In the beginning, God created Kana, the heavens and the earth. We get
that's
some connection there.
I thought that was what's the word? It's not Barak. That's Jeremiah.
I'm looking. Bara. You're right. Different.
Yeah,
different
Bara.
word. Shoot.
Okay.
Can't have it. Never mind.
That's okay. Whatever it is. I mean, it's like you could go with any number of those. And they all sound good to us, right? Being a smith worker or being the foundation. But this is. And notice how quickly, like we looked at that last time or a few weeks ago, they're the first ones to have metallurgy, to have music, And the best analogy for this is weeds. It's like, look how quickly those dandelions come up in my yard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's good.
okay, so tease us out with church growth. So just because you're getting all these numbers, and I appreciated your article, by the way, of looking at numbers in the most recent cloud, that there has to be some way to quantify it, right? So I don't want to poo-poo that entirely. But with every quantity, you also have to qualitize it. So
Yes.
just because you're getting the most numbers, you could be the weeds in the garden.
Right. And in the garden analogy is fantastic because, of course, in their seedling form, plants tend to be indistinguishable relative. I mean, like, unless you have a trained eye, it's going to be hard for you to tell the difference. And also, they're certainly indistinguishable in their color. It all looks green. And the notion that all growth is good growth, of course, is completely undone by the existence of cancer, right? So not all growth is good growth. Some growth, in fact, is parasitic or destructive, right? But there's something about the pace, right? So here it comes quickly and seems to be immediate success, instant gratification, and that we're attracted to that, right? So we see the green and we see it fast, we see it right away, and so we presume success.
Yeah. I'm thinking about a million different Bible stories that talk about agriculture, and parable of the sower, of course, is a natural place to start. So I'm not saying that growth is bad, because God wants growth. And that's how the parable ends. So Matthew's telling of it, this is great because it starts with the biggest number and then it comes back down, right? It's 160 and then 30. So this is the opposite of how you tell the story of how big your fish was, because it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and Jesus is just realistic about growth, and he doesn't poo-poo the 30-fold growth. I mean, that's still a good growth. I'm not a farmer, but that sounds pretty good, right? So what I'm saying is, whenever we get into these competitions solely for numbers, it's like, come on, can't we just be happy for each other? Like, David, I'm so happy for you that you got 2K views on your YouTube shorts. That's great.
And I'm so happy you got 7K views on one of your YouTube shorts. Yeah.
I know. I'm a celebrity.
I get this Sunday email from whatever, this guy who's like thinks about things. It's like a philosophical email. What's it called? Brain Food, a weekly newsletter. He's got a podcast too. I can't remember his name.
I thought that was Jerry Kishnick's weekly. Sorry, continue.
No, that's something else. But there's these proverbs. I always read them on Sunday morning before church, and they always are very thought provoking. And the one proverb says just what you said, with a little twist. Is here's how it goes: the quicker you want something, the easier it is to manipulate you. The quicker you want something, the easier it is to manipulate you. And when growth is desired for its own sake, or is used as the only measure of success, you can attain it. You certainly can. And in the process, you are being manipulated by the spirits that are Antichrist, essentially. So when you chase numbers and don't desire it's like the Lord desires all men to be saved. That's the biggest number there could be. But the operative thing there is not in the all, it's in the being saved part, right?
Right. Precisely because that brings God glory.
Yeah.
That's a good email. You'll have to. I don't have time for that on Sunday morning. Do people ever ask you if you read Portals of Prayer on Sunday morning?
No, they tell me about it in Bible class, which is helpful. They tell me what I said later.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Okay, so you have Cain and then Enoch, so they're dedicated to evil. And the next comes Irad, and according to James Jordan, this means the man who dwells in a city like a wild donkey. And now, I think that's kind of ambiguous because this kind of comes up with Ishmael later on. He's told he's going to be like a wild donkey of a man. So we're kind of waiting to see how this is going to play out. Now, we know the end of the story, so this is not good. But
I'm trying to think of how a wild donkey behaves. I have no idea what that would mean. Undomesticated, unrestrained.
Yeah, could it be?
Donkeys can be pretty violent, in fact. Yeah.
Yeah, I know they kick. So is it Isaiah 2, or is it Isaiah 1? The donkey knows his master, right? But you, O Israel, don't know, don't know
Yeah.
me, the Lord.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
They use
that would be
donkeys
wild.
as they use donkeys as livestock guardian animals. You put a donkey out in the field with your sheep, and it will kick the coyotes. That's a domesticated donkey.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, donkeys are a whole lot better than we like to depict them on Palm Sunday, right?
Right.
They're not. It's not this sign of humility. Now, in a sense, it kind of is, right? Because humble and mounted on a donkey, right? Zechariah 9. But if you ever notice it in John 12, so that's Palm Sunday according to John, he cites like Zechariah 9, but he omits the word humble.
Yeah. Right. Right. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I mean it's Solomon's it's David says put Solomon on my royal donkey. And this is I mean so the humility is that the king is going to be a servant, but the it's exalting it's the coronation animal for Solomon.
Okay, so I was thinking about this too, because so I don't know if there's technically a difference, but tease us out, because isn't it technically a mule for Solomon and then Absalom?
Mm. Oh.
So so if it is, which I'm willing to accept it's the same thing, but if it
Yeah.
is, what I'm thinking is the thing about a mule is that it's sterile, so it can't pass on the line. So it's kind of saying like, here he is, but this isn't going to go on for forever, like the eternal son of David.
Okay. That's I'm going to have to work on that. That's interesting. I'm just looking if I can spot it. But that makes sense. King David's mule. Yeah. Mm. Hmm.
So that thought appeared to me. Plato says that your brain is like an aviary and your thoughts are like birds.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Okay. Well, we'll have to work on that one. That one's good because then I don't know if you mentioned this, but I think maybe you were alluding to it that like it's the colt, the foal of a donkey, right? So it's this perspective, like lots of potential there for a future kingdom, right?
Right, exactly. And then just one more bit on donkeys is the Book of Judges. You've got a couple example of just these really pompous judges who ride on 30 donkeys or 70 donkeys with their descendants.
Right. And then you've got Samson who kills with the jawbone of a donkey, and then there's this great poem, which is
And he
heap
names the
upon
hill.
heap,
Yeah, he names the hill
which is
the hill of a donkey of a jawbone, right? Yeah, jawbone
that,
donkey.
that
Yeah, that's great.
that's right, and it's this play on words because hill
Hill.
sounds like the word for donkey. Yeah, yeah,
That's right. Yeah, so it's like donkey, 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 donkey.
yeah. Clever guy. What a clever guy said that Samson. Yeah,
I mean, this would be if you heard about Samson in your day, you'd go to the water cooler or the well, and you'd say, "Did you guys hear what Samson did today?"
right, right.
And it's so great because his name is son, right? That's what Samson
Hmm.
means. So like here he comes rising, and there's a play on words because the Philistines tried to keep him down. It's like, hey buddy, good luck trying to keep the sun down.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. Huh. Okay,
Okay,
so now so
so
we got Irad, the man who dwells in a city like a wild donkey. What's next?
yep. And then the third then from Cain would be Mahu Yael, which means he who strikes out against the Lord God. So you see Ja and El at the end of his name. So now it's just directly obvious. Cain's line is rebelling against the Lord God, and his son Mahushael means he who kills the peace. So you see Shalom. So he who kills the peace of God. So it just keeps getting worse. So now there's no peace. Now, I don't know if I buy this. I kind of like it, but Lamech, it could be a playing on the word Melech, which is the word for king. So you just swap the M and the L there, and now you've got a king of evil. And so this is where it ends. And Lamech, based on his poetry, certainly thinks he's a king. Listen here, you O wives of Lamech.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And I'm skipping ahead here, but what we are waiting for, what anybody needs is rest, is Noach, but you don't get it. It doesn't come in Cain's side. It's just more and more turmoil, things devolving.
Right, exactly. You got people striking out against the Lord, people actually killing peace. Right. So yeah, you're right. What we need is Noah, rest. Now, if you compare this then with Seth's line, it's it's very humble in comparison. So Seth, his name means foundation. So this is kind of the same with Enoch. So Enoch is dedication, Seth foundation, but it's an entirely different foundation. So second would be Enosh, meaning humble man, and then his son Canaan, meaning to chant a lamentation. So things are not going well for Seth, and you see this throughout the genealogies in Genesis.
I'm just thinking about the instructions given to um, Ezekiel, or to the man who's with Ezekiel when he's having this. He's been taken by the lock of hair and taken to Jerusalem to view the desecrations that are taking place in Jerusalem while the exile's underway. And one of the instructions is to put a mark on everyone who weeps and laments for Jerusalem. And it would make sense, of course, that as you're watching, these long lifespans spin downward and downward and downward, that the godly would be full of lamentation, right? That they would be lamenting this, that everyone is doing what's right in his own eyes. Um, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Things used to be better, right? Of course, there's going to be a lamentation.
And to add insult to injury, these guys are living for 6, 7, 800, 900 years. So it's not only like you live, you die. It's like you live some more, and then you live a few more 100 years, all while evil is progressing.
Yeah, and in fact prospering, right? So it's as true then as it is now, and as it was at the time of David in his Psalms. The righteous. Why is it that the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer? So imagine, imagine it's not just like that. You look out and you see, oh, here's some cruel elite who's succeeding in his cruel ventures, and then he dies, and over the course of 100 years, you watch people live and watch them die. No, you're watching the same guy succeed in his vile endeavors for 700 years long. It's like that'll make a guy pull his hair out. It's like
Oh, okay. Speaking of a guy pulling his hair out, I went to some AI to generate an image for our podcast, and I told it, hey, two pastors and clericals speaking on the microphone, and one is just beautiful and 30, and the other is an old man who's bald.
super. That's great.
So we're gonna use that now, and I got a good video that we're gonna use now. While we're on the topic, do you have any profound insight on these really long lifespans, other than the fact that the more that sin, gets into the world, the quicker we die? Or any other thoughts on that?
You mean the fact that they become shorter, or
Yeah. So what to make of? Did they really live 969 years in the case of
yeah,
Methuselah?
of course they did, because it says so, right? So, but I think you see this interesting I hate the word tension, but there it is, right? So on the one hand, you've got the Dominical mandate to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And if you've got not many people and you want to have, if you want to fill the earth and subdue it, long lifespans are a good way to do that, right? Because you can be, having lots of children, and everybody can be having lots of children. At the same time, the longer people live, the longer evil people live, the more evil they can get up to, right? So it's a catch-22. So and that's characteristic of life in the fallen, sinful world, is that basically everything's a catch-22 at this point, right? And so that to me is where it makes sense that God would say, "My spirit will not abide with man," right? For his intentions are evil, or however he puts it, right?
Yeah, and we can talk about the 120 years next time. It is kind of fascinating. That's how it's kind of worked out. But I think the best way to read that is actually from the moment he's saying that there's going to be 120 years. Now, this means that Noah preached for 120 years. It's like, man, you've had a rough one there at Fairhaven, right? And you've been there what, 6 years?
So 120 years preaching, and he waited until he was 600 years old before he had any, or he didn't have any children until he was 600 years old, and he's watching all of the previous generations die out, so that he's the only one left, but at the time of the flood.
Do
So
we
they're all dead.
do we know that he didn't have any other children?
Oh, I guess I presumed it because of the pattern. That's a good question. Let's see here.
I'm just wondering if he had more children and only three got on the ark.
I suppose that's possible. Yeah. After Noah was 500 years old, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a
It
little
doesn't
bit
exclude the
ambiguous.
possibility, but yeah, I guess
Right.
so.
That could be an interesting conversation for next time. But okay, yeah, good take on the years. Okay, so then after Kenan, who's third, you have Mahalalel. So it's interesting comparing the lines. So his means the praise of God, while his counterpart on Cain's line means he who kills the peace of God. So you've got one line killing the peace of God and prospering, the other hand praising God, and yet his son is named Jared, who means one brought low. So what does praising God get you in this life? Humility. And then after Jared, you get Enoch. So this is the guy we all love. We know he gets brought up in Jude, and then right, it's Jude, right, talking about walking with God.
Yes, I think
Um,
so. Yeah.
and then interestingly, he wrote a book, right, which is in the pseudepigrapha. That'd be a fun topic sometime. The Book of Enoch, and I think it kind of colors out some stuff. But anyways, great guy. God takes him just like Elijah. So he's dedicated to God. His son is Methuselah, 969 years old, oldest guy to have reported. And I do think this is interesting. He falls short of 1,000 by 31 years. So even though you have an incredibly long lifespan, you don't get to that 10 cubed number.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. I was thinking about the sequence of names here. It occurs to me that this happens to some degree in the order that Leah has her children. So I was just thinking about, like, how Leah's progression, right? So because God sees that she's held in low esteem by Jacob, God blesses her and gives her a son, Reuben, and then Simeon, and she gives these reasons for the names, right? So Reuben is, because the Lord has looked on my affliction, now my husband will love me. Okay, so that's Reuben's name, and then Simeon, because the Lord has heard, right? However you pronounce it, and you get that root of Shema. Because the Lord has heard that I'm hated, He's also given me this son also. That's number 2. Number 3, now this time my husband will be attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. So she called his name Levi. So it has to do with his heart, I believe. And then the 4th son, Judah. This time I will praise the Lord. So there's this. It's interesting because you can see in this progression of children that she has this kind of ebb and flow of trusting the Lord. So on the one hand, praise God, He's given me a son because He's seen my affliction, and now my husband will love me. And then it's like, He heard my cry. It's just like up and down, and then it concludes with praises the Lord, right? This time I will praise the Lord. And I think you can see that a little bit here in what you've described. It's an ebb and flow of hopefulness versus despair, given the circumstances of the world in which they're living and the troubles of the city that they're trying to build, right?
Do you see this in the church here?
You mean in the move from, say, penitential Advent to joyous Christmas to the revealing of Epiphany to penitential Lent and joyous Easter?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
I think that's good for us to experience the spectrum of not only emotions but spiritual disciplines, because we get brought into this confessional season, but then all summer, it's green, it's joyous, right? So a majority of the time it is joyous following Easter. So that's something to note. Easter is longer than Lent by,
Right.
10 days, depending on how you're counting, 4 days if you include the Sundays. But however you count, Easter is 50 days longer than the season of repentance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a constant reminder that the joy that we have in the flesh is joy that is received by faith, right? It's the joy of salvation, not yet seen. So that what Jesus says for us in Easter 4, a little while and you will not see me, and a little while you will see me. You will weep and you will mourn, but your grief will become joy, will become rejoicing, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's true. It's just a platitude, but like you can't really experience that pure joy until you've gone through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yeah, and or like how quickly, because of the corruption of sin, we forget, right? So it's like you do experience it purely by faith. I mean, Easter, nothing is better, but how quickly you again need to be reminded of the of the valley of the shadow of death, right? How quickly you forget, what that joy was like. It's like the image that Jesus uses, right? The birth pangs are forgotten when the child is born, and then the child starts to disobey, and you forget how glad you were when the child was born. Right?
No, that's really good. And you even see it the very same day of Easter, right? They're gathered, they're terrified. It's like you go from the happiest moment in the world to locking yourselves in an upper room the very same day.
Yeah.
Okay, so Methuselah means his death shall send. So now you go from being dedicated to we're all gonna die. You don't ever watch the you don't ever watch The Simpsons, do you?
No.
So my favorite model for pastoral care is Reverend Lovejoy, and there's this great scene where a comet's coming for the Earth, and everybody can see it coming to Springfield, and it pans to Reverend Lovejoy, and he's so Homer says, this is gonna make me a praying man. I wish I were. It's time like these that I wish I were a religious man. And it pans to Reverend Lovejoy running outside, going, "It's all over, people. We don't have a prayer."
Okay.
So that's why I got into the pastoral ministry.
Yeah,
Well,
that's good.
it's great because his name's Lovejoy, but he doesn't have love. He doesn't love his people. Flanders calls him and he's like, "Ned, you ever thought about the other religions? Like they're pretty much all the same thing." And he obviously doesn't have joy. Well, okay, I know you're shaking your head, but this is like he is the prototypical Protestant minister in America. And
yeah, very good. Yes, they hit the mark. That's right. There you
go. And he's got buttons on his pulpit, so if the people are falling asleep, he's got like a couple different buttons, and one of them is like bird sound. People think there's a bird flying. Okay, yeah, me too. Okay, so then after Methuselah's death shall send, and poor guy, he's got to live 969 years watching this all unfold. I mean, this is so helpful to think about this in this term. David, what was 1,000 years ago? 1,025?
Yeah. Been watching all of that history. I'm just looking at my chart here, and it has Methuselah dying in the year 1656 after creation. Lamech, Noah's father, dies in 1651 after creation. Methuselah outlives everybody except for Noah, and he dies in 1656, and the flood comes in 1657, according to this chart. So if you added up the timelines, so it's like literally his death shall send, and in this case, it sent the rain, that flooded the earth.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so putting that in our timeline, we would say creation's about 4,000 BC, and then the flood is roughly 2,000 BC.
Yeah.
Right. And
let's see here, closer to like 2,400 BC.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And there is kind of a question. So is how we add up the numbers, right? There's a little leeway. So, but it's roughly that amount. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it's actually nice how consistent it is that you get these really round numbers that are helpful for remembering things. So what we get Abraham's at 2,000 and David's at 1,000. That's really helpful. God, thank you.
I believe in providence. Okay, and then just to round it out, Lamech is from Methuselah, and if that's the play on the word king, okay, that's great. You have a new king who's going to give the son of the king is going to be Noah then. So this would be kind of like a David Solomon
Yeah,
paradigm.
right.
Solomon brings rest; he gives peace.
And of course, as we'll see in Genesis 6, it's kind of the inverse of David, because the rest in this case comes very violently, right? There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of blood that comes with Noah's rest.
So
In the
okay, so
flood,
that's
I
just right. So that's just like David,
right.
right? Who was a man of blood, where the son's the son. Okay, yeah, great. You got any thoughts here on this genealogy? I really enjoy genealogies. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said nope, I skip them. But now that people have pointed out to me the different names and the different things going on in them, they're so much fun to work through and think through.
Well, yeah, that's right. And the simplest rubric for reading a genealogy and gaining something from it is to look for the patterns and observe what breaks the pattern. Right. So there are, even in this short genealogy of Seth, these like Enoch walked with God. Like, here's something that breaks the pattern, something for you to reflect on. Or the genealogies of Jesus. When the non-Israelite women are introduced into the genealogy, it breaks the pattern and it makes you pause and reflect.
Right. Well, we could spend 10 weeks talking about Matthew 1. We'll do that sometime.
Yeah, sometime in 20 years we'll get there. So, all right.
I look forward to it.
I'm good. I'm gonna click stop. It says trying to reconnect. Make sure you have a stable internet connection. It means
Okay. What kind of internet do you have out there in Fairhaven?
yeah, not good, because your face is really blurry. Been blurry this whole time. So